So those of you who were here before the High Guardian Spice review, which is less than 10% of you, you might remember me saying that I would lay off of Disney, and I did. And I'm making this video because it's important people understand why I don't like Disney. I have no problem with the properties they own. My problem is corporate Disney. I have no problem with any of the individuals that they hire to act in their movies. My problem is corporate Disney. So here's some stuff that Disney has very much in fact done. First of all, they shafted John Boyega. And I know I've mentioned this before, I'm standing by it. John Boyega should have been the new hero of the trilogy. They set him up as the new hero and he was very clearly supposed to have a big role. But instead, they decided to completely nix his entire character line in favor of Rey's and then never actually gave him another one. So he's just awkwardly hanging off the side of the trilogy, despite the fact that he was literally the cover person for it. The first trailers featured him very prominently. He was signed on as a main character and then promptly forgotten about. I have never seen a more insulting treatment of an actor before in my life. Another thing they very much have done is that they sued the estates of various superhero property owners. These property owners are going to stop lending their property to Disney. Now, under normal circumstances, a company like Disney would just write a large check and say, let us keep the copyright to the characters for another disclosed amount of time. That's generally how it works when you split up your copyrights the way Marvel did. But you'll notice I said estates, not the actual makers of it. So it's important to note that the only reason that these estates still own the rights to the characters is because Disney lobbied to have the copyright laws extend beyond the life of the creator so that they could hold on to their properties well beyond the lifespan of the creators that originally made them. But now that someone else is using these exact same laws, Disney obviously has a problem with it because it's not in their favor anymore. And I view the defenders of this lawsuit kind of the same way I view King from the Owl House.
Beat up the man and steal his things for me!
The only reason this has any legal credence is because of Disney. And quite frankly, if Disney really wanted to have these properties back, Disney could put the lifetime income of the average person on a check and hand it to them now, and it wouldn't even affect their bottom line. The only reason they're going the legal route is because it's cheaper to pay the legal fees than it is to pay for the actual copyright. I think Disney's probably going to win because Disney has more money than God. But on that note, we should all be aware that starting in 2024, Steamboat Willie and some other early iterations of Mickey Mouse will enter public domain. And I would absolutely tell you to go completely nuts with that. In fact, I want a fully voiced R34 Steamboat Willie game to be made. His name is made for Rule 34. But unfortunately, they're probably just going to change the laws again and regain their copyright. Also in the news on Disney, they fucked over Scarlett Johansson. I've seen people talking on both sides of this argument, but let me spell it out for you. The movie that Scarlett Johansson was in, Black Widow, required her. So Disney decided to do what a lot of media producers actually do. Instead of paying the insane amount of money that they would have to in order to get the actor sometimes, or actress in this case, they would instead offer a percentage of the box office. It's a completely reasonable tactic because if the movie flops, then I guess you weren't worth the money anyway. But if the movie succeeds greatly, then I suppose you definitely deserve it. So percentage of box office sales is not at all uncommon. Percentage sales are a great way to save money on production while also making sure that if it is a good idea, the actor or actress does get their fair share. Here's the problem though. Disney, being all for the idea of an empowered woman superhero, was all for it right up until they discovered a way that they could cut her out of some of the profits. And on the release day, the box office release day, they also released it on Disney Plus. All you had to do was pay a box office level price to watch it through the streaming service instead of at an actual theater. But that's not technically a box office, so she didn't get a cut of that. Considering her movie will eventually be free on Disney Disney Plus anyway, that was essentially just an online box office. It was the same exact principle, just they didn't give her a cut of it. They completely undermined what was going to be probably the lion's share of her paycheck, which, regardless of where you stand on it on a legal basis, it was an outrageously shitty thing for them to do. And to top all of these things off, the unforgivable. They used the dead Stan Lee's Twitter account to promote NFTs. For those of you who don't know, NFTs are like if you wanted to do money laundering through cryptocurrency, but you didn't quite understand it, so they made a picture book version. But that was vile. Stan Lee besmirched in the name of cheap NFT pandering. An idea so outrageously bad that you just cannot believe that an actual human thought this was a good idea. Literally no one was having it. I'm sure they're still gonna make a fuck ton of money selling their NFTs because of course they will, but the vast majority of the human population recognized that this was an ugly thing to do. Dictionary.com, the verified Dictionary.com, even came in to say this, and holy shit, Dictionary.com came in taking no prisoners. Frankly, this kind of action is not uncommon for Disney. And all of these things reminds me of that time Mr. Krabs sold the Krusty Krab to a corporation. And that's Disney. It is exactly like that. Making mostly empty, reproduced, painted to look like the original that you liked content, with all the heart squeezed out unless someone snuck it back in. But what more can you expect from the company that hasn't had a new property to its name that it didn't buy for decades? Seriously, look it up. When was the last time Disney actually created something new? It's like looking back at the original slogan for Apple. Does more, cost less. How did that age? Apple products now do shockingly little, and they cost more than everything else on the market. The old Disney used to make things. The new Disney recycles things or buys them outright from people who are more talented creators. When it came to The Mandalorian and Rogue One, they snuck those decent media in there because people with true passion for what they were making managed to get into the production. But when it came to Star Wars Vision, they literally outsourced it to people who were more creative than them. The reason Demon Slayer outsold the entire US comic book industry on its own is because in Japan they're making new stories, whereas here in America we have been resold the same two endlessly expanding universes for coming up on a century. And while I'll be the first to admit that there's plenty of just horrible stories out there in Japan, at least they're making new ones. And if they do make a bad one, they're not stuck with it, they don't feel the need to defend it, and they could maybe remake it once if they think they can do it better, but because it was an original property, they can just let it go and make something new later because they still have creators instead of people recycling something that they bought. Anyway, like, share, comment, subscribe, and let me know, what's your favorite Disney-owned property? Do you think there's hope of originality going forward? And what series do you think had the worst time in the Disney soul press? What acquired property had the most of its passion and love just squeezed right the fuck out of it? Or conversely, what ones do you think survived it the best? But if you want to protect the poor, defenseless, multi-billion-dollar corporation from my 500 sub YouTube criticism, go down to the comments and be entertainingly angry.
Why, oh, why is the Grinch so thick? He's got more cake than 10 St. Nick's, an ass so fat that it makes me sick. What in the world could he do with it? He's got a dump truck too big for the road. You bet your skinny ass it's a damn wide load. And his cheeks clap, clap, what a fun, neat trick. Why, oh, why is the Grinch so thick?